So a lot of us have the conception that becoming debt-free is one of the stepping stones to achieve financial freedom. Due to this rigid mindset, we tend to blindly reject the possibility of using debt for wealth creation. But is debt really that bad? Is there another facet of debt that remains unexplored by the masses? Well, I'm going to answer this in today's video, and I'll try my best to give you a different perspective towards debt. Before we start, if you haven't subscribed to this channel, then smash that subscribe button because I keep coming up with these kind of interesting personal finance videos. Leverage in simple terms is using borrowed capital to profit substantially more from an investment. Let me give you an example so you get a better idea about leverage. Let's say you decide to buy a 1000 square feet commercial shop worth 1 crore. For this, you go to the bank and ask for a loan. The bank will tell you that you need to pay at least 20% of the property's value in down payment. This means that you are able to get the ownership rights of the property for 20 lakh rupees. What has happened here is that you have bought the commercial shop at a leverage of 5:1. Why 5:1? Because 20 lakhs is just 1/5 of 1 crore. Now, let's say 2 years down the line, the property's value increased to 1.3 crores. This means that in absolute percentage terms, the property value increased by 30% in 2 years. At this point, if you decide to sell the commercial shop, then you would make a profit of 30 lakh rupees. Now, had you not taken a loan and you were to invest just 20 lakhs in a small 200 square feet commercial shop, then in that case, the 30% appreciation would have taken your property's value to 26 lakh rupees and you would have made just 6 lakhs in profits on selling the same. So in this particular case, the 5:1 leverage has allowed you to make 5 times more profit than in the case where no loan was taken. When it comes to leverage, it is important for an individual to be able to identify the distinction between a bad and a good type of debt. Now, this classification is only meant for scenarios where the investor's objective is to use debt for wealth creation. Keeping that in mind, a bad type of debt is when one borrows money for either an asset that depreciates in value or an expense that yields no value after the cash outflow is completed. For example, buying a car on a loan or funding an international vacation with credit is not going to help you to create any wealth. On the contrary, the car will actually pull money out from your pocket in the name of maintenance and repairs, and the money spent on vacation vanishes without giving any tangible returns. Coming to good type of debt, it is when one borrows money for an asset that appreciates in value, and most often the asset also creates a regular cash inflow for the asset holder. Now I want you to comment down below which asset do you think have these two characteristics. But wait a second, just because an asset appreciates in value and creates regular cash flow doesn't mean that it is the right fit for an investment purpose. There is one tricky aspect that investors need to consider when evaluating an asset. To create value, the total return on the asset should exceed the interest charged on the debt. For example, if a rental apartment has a rental yield of 2% and the price of the apartment appreciates by 6% in a year, then taking a home loan at 9% interest doesn't make sense. But if the rental yield is 6% and the price of the property appreciates by 7% in a year, then your total return becomes 13%. In this scenario, taking a home loan at 9% interest totally makes sense. The thing with real estate is that it comes with a built-in safety cushion. If you ever feel that in the coming months you might not be able to meet the loan obligations, then you can simply choose to sell your property. In that case, you will not only be able to repay the existing loan, but you will also be able to pocket your part of the equity that you had acquired by making the 20% down payment and paying the subsequent EMIs. Additionally, real estate also allows you to enjoy regular cash flows in the form of rental yield. The benefit of this is that one is able to meet large part of their EMIs through the rent. What's more interesting is that as few years pass by, there comes a point when the rent on your property exceeds the EMIs. When this happens, you are able to pocket the difference between the rent and the EMI. On a microeconomic front, a large part of the population is migrating from rural to urban areas. Of course, there are various reasons for it, such as better employment opportunities, better education for kids, etc. But the real question is, why does this migration matter? It matters because the demand for real estate increases and it therefore leads to increment in the price of the properties. If we look at the taxation aspect, a person who invests in real estate through debt also enjoys certain tax benefits. Currently, under Section 24B of the Income Tax Act, you are allowed to claim a deduction of up to 2 lakh rupees for the interest that is paid on the property loan. Lastly, if your portfolio is already quite saturated in the equity and debt market, then investing in real estate is a great way to diversify your portfolio. It will help you to reduce your overall portfolio risk. Real estate investing is quite common in countries such as the US, primarily because the interest rates there are quite low. This is why prominent personalities such as Robert Kiyosaki invest heavily in real estate. In one of his recent interviews, he also mentioned that he owns roughly 15,000 rental properties. Now the thing is that the dynamics of real estate investing in India is a little different than in the US. Since the interest rate on property loans in India is on a higher side, investors need to do a little more homework to find the right investment property. Cities such as Bangalore and Kolkata have comparatively higher rental yield. What this does is that it reduces the research burden on investors, as there are various residential as well as commercial properties that are available at the perusal of investors to leverage upon. For other urban cities, it is mostly recommended to go for commercial properties such as a shop or a commercial land. The reason for this is that the rental yield on commercial properties is higher than residential properties. However, if you do deep research and scout for furnished residential properties, you will observe that few of these residential properties are also earning 6 to 8% rental yield. In that case, even residential properties can be taken into consideration to leverage upon. Let's do the math to see how many years it takes for your rent to exceed your EMI if the rental yield is 6%. If one takes a loan of 30 lakhs for a tenure of 30 years and the interest rate is 8.5%, then in that case, your monthly EMI comes out to 23,000 rupees. Now, if the rental yield is 6%, then the rent you can charge on your property will be 18,750 rupees. In India, people usually have a clause in rental agreements to increase the rent by 10% every year. Now, if we take that into consideration, your rent in the third year will be 24,956 rupees, which actually exceeds your EMI. And so technically, your tenant will pay off all your remaining EMIs, and few years down the line, you will also be able to pocket the difference in the rent and the EMI. Now, definitely, this might seem unrealistic to a few people, but I've personally invested in rental properties, and within 3 years, the rent on my property has exceeded the EMI. When taking a loan, the risk of non-payment increases when a person doesn't set his expectations right and when he has no plan to hedge against the downside risk. For example, rent from a property definitely helps in paying large part of the EMIs, but you can't fully depend on it to pay out all the EMIs. The reason is that in some months of the year, your property might be vacant and it usually takes a month or two in order to find another occupant. Also, to be on a safer side, you should ensure that your property's EMI doesn't exceed 28% of your active income. Active income is simply the income that you would earn from a job, business, etc. Another risk is not assessing the interest rate that is charged on your property loan. In situations of high inflation, the RBI tries to control the money supply in the economy by raising the interest rates. In that case, the borrower should eye for a floating interest rate loan and when the interest rates reduce, he should opt for the fixed interest rate option. Now, if the interest rates are already on the lower side, then the borrower should opt for the fixed rate of interest option and stick to it. Last but not the least, real estate always carries a liquidity risk. It is possible that you might not be able to find a buyer at the time you want to liquidate your property. To avoid facing such a situation, one should always maintain an emergency fund that is equivalent to at least 6 months of your EMI. This gives the borrower enough time to find a buyer and liquidate the property in case meeting the loan obligations seem far-fetched. To conclude, debt is definitely considered to be a taboo in our society, and most influencers and financial advisors advise and preach to stay away from debt. Well, this advice works for a lot of people because they aren't disciplined to manage a debt. But if you are disciplined, then debt can provide you with great wealth building opportunities. I personally have been able to scout for undervalued properties in my city, and I'm able to generate 6 to 7% rental yield from them. If you research well, you will definitely be able to find undervalued properties that have both the potential to generate high rental yield and the ability to give high capital appreciation. Hope you gained a new perspective towards debt today. Thank you so much for watching. Like the video, hit that subscribe button, and stay tuned for my next video.